IESF WEC 24 Riyadh, and now it's going to be Arashi and Naisu this time, and we have an exciting match for our next one because it's going to be a decider.
It is. It is a decider match, Arashi. You know, it's two. I feel like two teams that a lot of people don't know so much about. I would say because these are regions or teams that don't necessarily have as much of, I would say, like experience in terms of like being streamed and everything. Now, for example, for New Zealand, I know this team came from the OCC Australia qualifier, and if I remember right, they just started actually having their league over there. So these are rather two new teams. And then for Guam, of course, they went through their own selection process. And if you guys actually wanted to go and check those out, like if you want to know more about these teams, of course, you have the IESF.gg website you can look at. But also, if you go over to their pages for the official page on Liquipedia for IESF, you can actually watch their qualifiers. So if you guys wanted to get a glimpse of how that process went for them to lead them to here for the Asian Championships, you can check those out. So, but there's a lot here. I feel like that's left to be uncovered here, Arashi.
Especially with so much at stake right here, the winners, right, will make their way on to the next stage in Riyadh. So definitely, whatever stops they had saved up, whatever strats they were saving maybe for a later day, they gotta pull out now because this is kind of like a big moment for them. And even though they're a younger region, as we were discussing earlier, Mia and Mirko, just because you're newer to the scene doesn't always mean it's a bad thing. That can mean that you are a bit more adaptable. That could mean that new strats, new changes to the meta could be a bit more to your advantage, actually. But as we were talking about, ladies and gentlemen, up next, Guam versus New Zealand. Very new faces in the Mobile Legends scene so far, but we're really looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table.
Real quick, Arashi, I have to ask you. I know we're waiting to see this, and you know we can only theorize so much because we don't have as much data to go off these teams. How did you find the last match? Were you surprised? I was watching, you know, back here, so I have to ask you: were you surprised with the results from the last match? What do you think? Just real quick.
I mean, I gotta say, I'm very surprised because even if they weren't going to be doing as well, I thought they would for sure kind of at least put up a better fight, you know, made it a bit closer. But more on that later, man. For now, for Guam, GI3S, Kai, Secret, Slopezi, and Akuma.
You know, this lineup, like I said, I tried leading into ISF. I tried watching as much as I could of their qualifier, their selection. They called it like the selection for ISF. And, you know, listening to the casters, because this is always where I feel like you get the best insights, if you will. And the casters there talking about the team from Guam, the selection, they said they have a lot of good players over there. So they really had to kind of decide who were they going to create for the teams and then who would they eventually send over once they got through that qualifier. So this is, you know, going to be interesting to say the least because of the fact that they have a distinct play style, I would say. Even if you look at the next lineup, which is actually coming up right now from New Zealand, they also have a very distinct play style, but it changed because when they were going through their qualifier, we haven't been on the patch just yet. But why don't you go ahead and take us through this lineup from New Zealand?
So Chlui, Fat Penguin, Noob Master, Groovy Groove, and Touch My Bun. I have to say, I'm loving the name so far, man. It has a lot more meme potential, and I think a bit of fun is always a welcome addition to Mobile Legends. But as you mentioned, Naisu, their own respective unique playstyles, that is definitely what we're expecting, we're looking forward to seeing. But with the changes here, who knows, right? They might maybe be forced to try and take inspiration from other teams due to the the more drastic changes, or maybe they've gone even further down their route of uniqueness and came up with something even more unique than even what we're expecting.
You know, I saw, like I said, all we can see is based off what they went through with their qualifiers, and they had some meta picks come up. You know, they had some Novarias locked in the mid lane, the Farsas. They had the XP laners that we're usually used to seeing, like the Yuzhong, the Charizla. CC even picked up a couple times. So I think, you know, essentially playstyle wise, it's you take what they did in the qualifiers, you look at, you consider the fact that, like we did with even the African region, Arashi, we had to think about, like me and Mirko, where some of the teams we didn't know so much about. So it's like, well, this is your first time that you're going to be watching them play because, you know, they haven't been streams on some of those regions tournaments. And now that it has started and you get to see this kind of unfold in front of you know, based off their play styles and the qualifiers, this is a major thing. Like, how do they draft even as we jump into the draft here for game number 1? Because draft-wise, this could change the pace of the game already off that first pick, like we've seen. And even for the red side, picking up that red side, those 2 picks in response, we know that there's a lot of power picks currently. We know that there's a lot of deviation even when it comes to the jungle options, now that you have more of these assassin picks coming up, just like earlier we had that matchup.
Especially if both teams really come out with their assassins, it makes for a lot more of a flashier show for sure. But for now, looking at the bans, it's the Harith, it's the Valentina. Nothing too crazy just yet. But you have to wonder, right? With regions with quote-unquote less experience here, usually that macro game is something that takes a lot of experience, a lot of time to really try and mature into. So with that being said, the Lo Yi and the chip really does come to mind as something that can be used to great effect, but we'll have to wait and see if that is what they want to go for, or if both teams prefer just going straight for that scrappy playstyle that, in a way, is a lot more straightforward, a lot more simple, and it lends itself to teams that want to make sure that they can get the fastest improvement in the shortest amount of time.
Okay, well, as we get through these first phases of the drafts. By the way, I don't know if the thunder is going to come through my microphone, but it is storming here in the Philippines right now. So hopefully, you know, that doesn't cause any issues. But of course, with this first phase going through, I think already for the teams preparing for this, like obviously they're watching what's happening here in the championships and even back in the African qualifiers. This is where they kind of paint out their own meta on how they want to play. I think even your guys' interview earlier with Coach Arcadia from Malaysia, it was like, you know, you heard him. They're preparing for multiple things at once, and I feel like a lot of teams are in that position now. Specifically for New Zealand and Guam, you know, I don't know how many more tournaments that they're preparing for, exactly what the calendar looks like over in that part of the world. But this, surely IESF, one thing that can always be said about a tournament like this is the amount of XP boost. Like if you had, the cards in game that are like XP boosts for your account, right? That's this here for these teams like this. Like they get a huge XP boost just competing in IESF, and that's what we've seen time and time again from the teams that are a part of it. So now, next ban, it's Claude. These are already different bans than we're used to, Arashi. I mean, so far in the first phase.
I mean, the Faramis technically we've seen banned out, but very situationally. The Claude is a bit more of a surprise, and the Yuzong though, right? That is something that we've seen respected, but only for, again, very specific players. So the fact that it shows up right here is interesting, but Fredrin becomes the first option here for Guam, securing great clear, great sustainability, good scrapping potential for skirmishes in the early game. So now for New Zealand, we have to see the first inklings of what we can expect here. Is it going to be some more front lines? Oh, it's going to be the Roger first and foremost.
Okay, Roger picked up Chip. Wow, finally, we're actually going to see the Chip locked in. It's been kind of slept on, I feel like, so far throughout today. Louis Yi, another pick, and I don't know if that's actually what happened here, but it looks like they missed. It looked like Guam missed a ban. So I'm assuming that they actually did miss one and they only banned out 2 heroes here, but they're going to lock in, of course, Fredrin, Mozkov, Exborg. This is very reminiscent of before the patch like even came out and some of the new items. Now, I know we've seen Fredrin pop up now a couple times, even with a different emblem set sometimes, and the way that the build goes for these tankier junglers has changed. I'm just curious if this Roger is actually going to be the opponent in the jungle, because so far we've seen Roger in the jungle, we've seen him in the gold lane. Mirko asked me this earlier, what I thought was the best lane for Roger. I personally still think it is the jungle. Like I like him better in the jungle. Okay. And we'll see if they actually go this route. What do you feel about it, Rashi? Like do you think this Roger would actually be good in the jungle against the Fredrin? Oh, well, that answers the question, but I still want to know your opinion on this, Arashi.
I think it can do well against the Fredrin because of the clear speed and the fact that you can actually do well to really punish the Fredrin, because Fredrin likes being kind of on low HP. And so if you're on a hero with an execute, you inherently have a bit more of an edge against them. But of course, I do feel also that the gold lane now is just so critical, and I like having a healthy amount of DPS on that gold lane marksman. So I think Roger, I would prefer in the jungle as well. But again, it depends on the rest of the team as well. You can't just pick in one hero, slot him in without knowing where it fits into the rest of the composition. But now, up against the Moskov carry here, I think we've seen that it's been somewhat equal, skill-based, but the global presence from the Moskov, we've just seen it being used to great effect just last match. So I think for New Zealand, they're going to try and contend with that using the chip. So expect a lot of action there being taken by force towards the gold lane.
I think that's part of the hard part of Hero Rashi is utilizing the chip. I feel like obviously shortcuts great. The way that you get to move around the map is great. You get a lot of utility with that, but still I think, you know, for most teams, the fact that they're playing, okay, hold on, we'll see what ends up happening for the second phase of the draft. Do we have the same? All right, we have the same. I thought something else would happen. That's the point I was going into, Arashi. I was going to say, if you're playing into the chip that's moving around with the utility, Louis would be great. It was still open, but then New Zealand's like, no, Naisu, we're banning it out. They ban it out. They get rid of it. That's fine. Good choice. So I think the obstacle here for Guam, remember, guys, this is a best of 5. This is not a best of 3. I know we opened today with all best of 3s. This is a best of 5. I don't know if we stated that, but this is a best of 5 because there's only 2 teams from Oceania. So this team, whoever wins from this matchup right here, will go directly to Riyadh in the WEC. That they'll lock that slot in. So it's down to pretty much this one series, and you want to see them both kind of get that footing started off on the right foot for this series. And so far, I'm liking the way that New Zealand is going about this. Even that last ban is the Vexana. They take care of that.
Taking away a lot of the crowd control tools, knowing that they're going to be trying to barrel down as a whole, like Death Ball, as a big unit there. The Vexana can stop it in its tracks, especially with the Terrify mechanic. It can spread from one hero to multiple heroes as well. So taking away the mages as well is the option here for New Zealand. We're seeing a Minthithar in the bans, by the way, Naisu. So I'm not sure if that's actually what it is, but that also means that they're really concerned about all these gap closers, all these dashes that New Zealand might probably try and secure for themselves to go for something that just dives all into the backline. But with a Fredrin and an X-Borg, I'm not even sure if New Zealand wants to just go in such a frontal manner, you know?
Ah, man. Okay. I'm trying to think here for New Zealand, how they're going to round this out. They still need... There's the XP lane, I guess. Esmeralda locked in. Interestingly enough, the last pick needs to be a mid lane, unless something crazy happens. I don't know if that is. I can't completely count it out because earlier we saw Teresa mid, and Edith Rome. Well, Edith Rome isn't too crazy. Or no, sorry, Edith. What was it? XP lane? Edith XP lane. Anyway, Teresa mid. So this one, Esmeralda. If for some reason it ends up going in the mid lane, then they still need quite a bit of, they need something good to lock in their lineup from New Zealand. But if it's not, and that is going to go in XP lane Esmeralda, and they go for a mid lane, the Vexana, like I said, they're the ones that banned it out. So that's interesting they took it out. Novaria, is Novaria still open? Yeah, yes, it is still open. The Valentina was the one that was banned out. So we'll see. Florin, wow, okay, and the Lilia locked in here for Guam. So interesting with this. How do you feel about that, Arashi, for Guam?
So for Guam, I feel like that really just yells out, we're here to stay, like to entrench down and just stay in those fights. A lot of DPS tools, even including the mid lane, the Lilia. Now, especially if the fights go longer, you can get resets on those Angry Glooms. So that is something that's already such a big problem. Now with the Florin as well, they can stay in there quite indefinitely. And the response to that is going to be an Odette. So now it's going to be a full-on collision, almost like combo-based composition from New Zealand against Guam, that if you don't really get secure the kills outright immediately in the beginning of the fight, becomes an absolute nightmare to deal with.
Okay, Odette, I'm liking the Odette being locked in here because the biggest threat I see from this is obviously utilizing the chip. You shortcut in, boom, here's the whole team fight. Or even if it's just an Odette, you actually don't need to send everybody. But if the Odette goes through, Swan Songs into the you know, Guam here as a whole, that's something you really have to respond to and deal with. So I think scaling wise though, one thing that they really have to deal with is the healing throughput from a Florin. Like, we know that she's probably, I don't know actually if she has more throughput now healing than Estes, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty high, especially the fact that she gets some like true healing through that. But this, I think, is the biggest thing that New Zealand wants to answer. And we know there's so many items now that can deal with the healing here, Arashi. But let's go ahead and jump into the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, game one between Guam and New Zealand to decide who makes their way onto the next stage, onto Riyadh. Let's see how this plays out. Looking at the compositions, it's all DPS against a lot more combo, a lot more burst heavy. Like you mentioned, Naisu, it's about the healing coming in from the Florin. Is it going to be enough? And what can they try and do to try and mitigate that, especially against the Odette and the chip combo? It's almost like a Johnson-Odette combo we see in ranked games, but a more maybe reliable version.
A reliable version, the Johnson-Odette combo. We'll see if that actually plays to that idea, but I think still you can, if you're New Zealand wanting to get this lineup going, it might even be safer that they just, if they can't snowball Noob Master, if Noob Master cannot get the kills he's looking for on this Roger jungle, then it's better that they just kind of buy some time, allow Touch My Bun to get scaled up and farmed up here. Now, still, part of that too can be they can utilize, they have an Odette in their favor, so when it comes to these objective fights, Arashi, like, they should be able to hold it down pretty well with damage. But, you know, same thing. It's like when you're looking through the healing output from Guam, a little bit of poking here too, but nothing too much. Like I was saying, once you have that healing that you have to kind of deal with, you can't really figure that out until you have those items locked in. And that can be, again, Glowing Wand, it can be the Dominance Ice, it can be the multitude, the Sea Halberd of items that are available to you to deal with that. So I think it is crucial too that Fat Penguin, if he does build the Glowing Wand, one of his first items, then, you know, he's going to be a big component to dealing with the Florin. But then again, it's still, there's like true healing through it, so they need enough damage potential or burst
to make sure that the dash comes through, and it just comes through at the right time as well. Now both teams just holding on, trying to contest for the turtle. It's going to be a 50-50 though. See if Noob Master can try and get it.
Wow, Slope Ezzy goes in and gets it, and now they're going to be in trouble a little bit longer. Groovy Groove will fall the first blood. Spirit Destruction already used. There's the last Insanity. Double kill for Secret already. Starting the pace here from Guam, and with that, they'll go ahead and take the resources as well. They took the objective, and now the resources, the buff here from New Zealand. Not sure if Chole can do anything about this. Also takes a bunch of damage himself, holds it down, flickers in. Chole goes in, gets the kill on Zen. So now at least New Zealand on the board here.
But they lost the purple buff, and they didn't really get the same kind of presence, the same kind of prior they wanted for the neutral objective. They were able to secure it, but considering that they had a fighter in the jungle that should be a bit more sustainable, you know, they were kind of going all in right there, and they weren't really getting the same kind of snowball that you would expect from Noob Master, because he did go for the killing spree in his emblem setup. He's definitely expecting to be going in immediately, securing those kills, trying to snowball as hard as possible. But seeing how those fights played out, especially with Secret just outputting the damage so reliably with that AoE, I think it's going to be something that they have to be a bit more careful with.
They're going to have to be kind of calculated with it. I think this is already a good start, though, for Guam, especially the fact that they have a Lilia. You get that double kill, that early start. I think he just picked up the Enchanted Talisman, too, so already locking in that first item. It's going to help them out in some of these early skirmishes already, and that's something you can always rely on, once again, is having a floor in here. Anytime you draft up... Oh, wow. Fat Penguin, as I was just talking about, the Lilia gets a kill off cam, and now going to fight in the mid lane once again. The damage potential is already there, and extending the team fight with a healing, and Groovy Groove has to get out. He'll be fine. Kai picks up the Corrosive Scythe here, and now with all that, next turtle is going to spawn up.
That's a nasty composition from Guam, man. the Xborg and the Lilia just outputting damage so regularly, so intensely. It's almost like they're replacing the DPS. I mean, Kai wasn't even part of that fight just yet, and you can see how difficult it was for New Zealand to stay in the picture. Now Groovy Groove getting jumped on, but the turtle might fall to the hands of Guam.
Yep. Oh, yeah, Swap as he gets it once again. Spirit Destruction into the fight. Now they're going to battle it out once there. Fat Penguin goes down first, and now Noob. Oh, multiple members just getting wiped out here from Guam. They're going to force Touch My Bun out of there. So New Zealand not able to get anything. Not the turtle, not any kills either. And this is the power also. Just think about it, the focusing mark with this lineup from Guam, making Secret even that more deadly, landing those blooms time and time again.
Yeah, the focusing mark definitely played a role, but New Zealand clumping up together right there. The last insanity from Zukato Zen just immediately demolishes everyone who are trying to really stand their ground and match up against Guam. If New Zealand wants to go for something like that, they have to wait a bit longer for their members to secure the first kill at least reliably. Because with a carry, with a Roger, there is a chance that they can burst down the first member, the main front line, before the fight even begins. But therein lies the problem, right? The Xborg now going in on Shloi.
Ooh. Last Standing going to use again. New Master was the first one to go down and still going to find it out. There's shields being taken as well. Groovy Groove could be in trouble. Pops the Vengeance will go down anyway and still try to hold it together. But again, they lose 3 bodies. Fat Penguin not going to be able to use that Swan Song the way that he wanted to. And it's another kill. New Zealand loses this fight quickly in the bottom lane.
That's unfortunate, man. We were talking about the global presence coming in from this chip, but Guam doesn't care at all. They're gonna overwhelm you, pull you into their pace, pull you into their fights, and you're seeing that Groovy Groove wants to try and make opportunities happen for his team, but he's not allowed to do so. On the other side, Touch My Bun is able to actually get a turret in exchange, so small victories, but overall, the same underlying problem still persists for New Zealand. They can't match the damage output, and they can't really deal with all the AoE, and they're running out of options here to really force Guam to split apart. They can just stick together as 5, and New Zealand don't have ways to split push or don't have ways to crowd control to kind of break up the formations.
Yeah, this is already a game in a situation where it's slipping out of the hands of New Zealand for game number 1 in this best of 5. And now they're going to set their sights here on the top side, working on that tier 1 turret. They've already got the other 2 in the mid and the bot. And they've got themselves nearly a 7,000 gold lead to go with it. So Guam now putting the pressure here on the top side. Not sure if New Zealand even wants to really do anything about it. Looks like they're just going to call it off. And really, they're left to trying to decide where can they find the golden XP to farm up to hopefully match up with what Guam has. Because when you have this kind of lead, it's tough to work around with. Look at this, even Groovy Groove on this chip, just getting torn to pieces here. Half health already. Swap Ezzy gonna go in, gets the flicker out from Fat Penguin. Might get crashed down. There's the last Insanity. Already forced to use the ultimate Swan Swung. Won't be enough as that goes down. And now Fat Penguin gone out of the picture. That's the biggest amount of early damage that this lineup from New Zealand has. And now they have to defend the tier 2. Guam eyes set on that. Another objective for the taking here. Not sure if New Zealand really wants to fight this out at all. Try to clear the ways they can. But once again, under the turret even. Look at the damage coming through. Last Insanity will find again a double as New Master drops. Guam decisively winning another fight. New Zealand really struggling with these team fights and really trying to catch a breath in this game 1.
Zukato Zen on the Xborg, man. Absolutely menacing. It's not just the damage. The fact that you can't really take him out immediately. He has the extra built-in Immortal with the Firaga armor. And the fact that he's so decisive here with the last Insanity. It's not just the damage, it's also the slows. He has finished that that Ice Queen's one. So whenever those flames touch you, you're just so much slower than you usually are. And Secret has the same items. So now for Guam, it's all about tagging the members of New Zealand with some spells, getting them slow enough, and when you're that slow, the Florin will land a stun, the Moskov can land the Spear of Destruction, and it's just that. Ooh. And look at the tankiness of Shloi. It doesn't mean anything. He's gonna get burned down.
Cholet goes in. There's the last Insanity once again. Gonna find the kill. Spear of Destruction not gonna land on the target. 2 down once again for New Zealand, and that's also going to be the Lord secured here for Guam. And Kai still putting the pressure on the top side. So just a win after win across the map for Guam as they further the lead, and now 10,000, nearly 11,000 ahead of New Zealand.
This is one-sided as heck, man. Even the main front lines, Groove and Chloe on the EXP lane for New Zealand, they can't really stand in the front any longer. The fact that Esmeralda went with the lethal ignition as well, wanting to do a bit more damage perhaps in the laning phase, but now she's just struggling to really stay alive even. She can maybe escape from big fights, but that's about it. Even if there's an opportunity that New Zealand can capitalize on, they don't really have the engage tools to really try and catch someone off guard. With the Lord coming in right here, Guam, with such a gold advantage, might just go for the base turrets immediately by brute force.
Yep, they're going to go for it. Lord now at the base, knocking on the doors of New Zealand, trying to hold it together the best they can, working against a massive lead. And there's Groovy Groove falling once again. This last insanity will not stop, just unleashing hectic team fights here all around. And now New Zealand can't do anything with the fight as Guam will take game number 1.
Wow, what a destruction coming out of Guam. We thought that this is the deciding match. Everyone has all the stops removed, but man, Guam was just pushing that aggression on another level. That was the first Lord they picked up, and they immediately just brute forced their way through the base turrets, through the 5 members of New Zealand to try to just immediately wrestle away game 1. They did not have permission, man.
So just a little fun fact, that last team fight, they came in like a storm. My power flickered like a storm. So my power flickered. Oh my goodness,
bro.
Guam coming in like a little storm, man. I did not expect this from Guam.
That just came out of nowhere. We thought that there were some more plans here, some more calculations on how they want to approach the fights. But it turns out for Guam, it's just non-stop fighting again and again. They did not have, by the way, a big team fight engage tool. They did not have like an iron hook from a Franco, a big penalty zone. They just kept moving forward. Their main engage tool is Zukato Zen just going in aggressively, slowing everyone down and just bursting you down outright. And even when New Zealand saw a chance, the counter was just too much. And the healing, Naisu, you've been highlighting it since the beginning of the game. But man, this Florin was just untargetable with all this damage, all this utility spread out in the front.
You know, as you look at the highlights here, I mean, it's mainly a Guam highlight reel. And it just, I don't know, it's one of those very one-sided games. And I think as for both of these teams, when you think about what do they have to, like, playstyle-wise, number one, Zukato Zen on this Esports was just deadly. Every single team fight that they had or initiation that they had really, it was so hard for New Zealand to play against the last Insanity. And you saw that, especially when he had the Ice Queen 1 locked in, it was just even tougher to get away from the initiations, and Secret starting things off with the double kill early on that he had, and just really well played from Guam. I mean, clearly this is a team that has synergy with each other. They have some experience, especially in their local scene, because it's very apparent here the way that they're playing. And I'm going to go back to what I heard from their casters, right? Where their casters were talking about for their Guam selection team, that there's a lot of good players over there. They even said themselves they're just not well known enough for the rest of the world to know them. And I guess, you know, this IESF platform is going to be the first time that a lot of people get to see some of these players. And if you're looking at this game, I mean, 10.5 minutes in, and yes, it's against another Oceania team. It's New Zealand. They're rather new themselves, but it looks like Guam, for some reason, is just further ahead in terms of like the, you know, the experience, or even in this lineup, the skills that they showed here. Player of the match, the MVP here is going to be Secret on that Lilia.
6-0 and 12 on the Lilia, securing the double kill. And from there, just running with it, man. Going in aggressive, knowing that he has the black shoes. I mean, it's so unfortunate for New Zealand that their whole composition is all about going in, clumping together for those big fights. Maybe relying on the Swan Song as a bit of a zoning tool. But turns out, whenever he's in position with the Swan Song, just trying to output damage, he just eats a ton of damage from both the Esports and the Lilia. And it's not just the damage, it's also the utility. back then, the Lilia with the Ice Queen's one and the glowing one was already such a menace. Now with the healing reduction built into the glowing one as well, that was just such a difficult time for New Zealand, because they have an Esmeralda, they have an Odette, and those shieldings, right, gets reduced by the glowing one as well. So even if they're banking on having extra bits of tankiness, it's almost like the core items for the heroes for the side of Guam just countered that already all the way from the beginning. So when it comes to 5v5s, there was no option. When it comes to macro plays, I don't think we've seen a game in a while now where the chip was that sparsely using the shortcut, man, because he wasn't allowed. He was denied completely.
Yeah, I was going to say, back to the draft, I was thinking, man, it would have almost made sense if they had the Loi. It was banned out to deal with the chip, but you play like this, Arashi, you don't need it. You just counter the chip just like that, because every time you would almost be second guessing for Groovy Groove to drop the shortcut, because just the amount of the foot that they started on for Guam was already giving them that lead. And then if you're going to drop the shortcut and you're going to bring your team into a out itemed lineup, especially with this, and you don't want to drop the shortcut down. You don't want to bring your team to that. And so I feel like they really struggled on actually utilizing Groovy Groove here because of the chip, and not really winning those early fights caused the snowball to just get out of control. So what we're seeing so far from IESF is some of these games going 10.5 minutes or 10 to 13 minutes and being a pretty one-sided game, or sometimes even some of those 13 to 15 minute games are very close. But this is one of those instances where just Guam came out swinging from the get-go. They got a lot of this gold built up. Again, Secret MVP was the one that really started things on this Lilia pick, but I think there was just so many things that were difficult for New Zealand to deal with, because aside from just being bursted down so quickly or slowed to death from the last Insanity, they had no answer for the heals, for the Florent. I mean, they never got in a position for that, because we're talking about a gold lane especially that takes some time to build up. And this is Carrie. She has a very low range. So when you got to deal with an X-Borg, how are you going to even be able, let's say even if you had the items on a carry, you can't really fight the way you want to move around the map or move, movement or anything, because of the last Insanity and just everything being thrown at them, especially on an AoE aspect when it came to those team fights. So this was a really good draft from Guam. I mean, when we first saw it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, this can work. Great to see the Florin pop up, because we don't really see Florins or the Estes. We saw a little bit of Rafaela pop up through ISF so far, but overall, this was an interesting lineup that they brought for game number 1. And for New Zealand, while we wait for the draft here, there's still a lot that they can do, that they can adjust from. It is a best of 5. That was only game number 1, so maybe this was their, let's kind of get settled in type of game. It was a quick run. It was 10.5 minutes, but maybe the game 2 will be different for them.
Yeah, maybe they're just testing the waters, right? Just making sure, okay, I want to see what you got. I want to see how you want to set the tone for the fight. And maybe now, if they make the read that Guam just likes going for all these all-ins, all these big fights, then maybe now, if they draft a composition with a lot of crowd control, a lot of engages, right? Something like a Minion Fury, penalty zones, stuff like that, then maybe they can get the better hand. Because at least for this game, we saw that there were tools available to the side of Guam that they weren't really using, right? We saw the Spear of Destruction play a part, but for the most part, they weren't playing the same way Malaysia was doing, with a semi-split push, a global play. So if it's only gonna be fights again and again, then there's a chance that they can be countered. But the problem is for them, Guam, for them is also game number 1 only, right? They can very easily adjust a bit more and have more depth, more flexibility in their composition. So we'll have to wait and see. I think one thing for sure, for the side of New Zealand, they're going to be a lot more respectful of the dive potential here. If they want to have especially something like a carry in the back line, I think for game 2, they for sure will be finding some kind of way to stave off the aggression, man. Because like you said, Naisu, against an X-Borg, even if you are fully built, your basic attack range is basically right up against the range of the flames, right? And it just gets a bit too dangerous. So I think for sure there will be adjustments, but the question is, how long will New Zealand take to really recover enough? And this is before talking about the mental game, right? There's a lot of pressure right here, a lot on the line. And for both teams, this is like their big opportunity to try and break out into the international stage.
I think that's a really good point, Arashi. And really, when people tune into this, you know, they're gonna see like there is a difference in some of these countries really competing and maybe the experience they have. But that's why I went into before we went to the draft for game number 1. I was like, you know, for a lot of these countries, and we heard this even back when we were doing interviews with Africa, a lot of this is just some of these countries and these players are so happy that now they have a platform to join these international tournaments is number 1. Number 2, they get a chance to actually compete with some of the best players in the world for MLBB. And all that does is, you know, obviously gives them the experience, gives them that opportunity to make a name for themselves in some way or another. Because I mean, think about the actual possibilities of, you know, having these platforms like IESF, where you might be in a region that isn't as developed, say, for example, a country like Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and maybe you get spotted. You know, there's talent all over the world out there. I feel like there's hidden talent all over the world, and you never know now that MLBB is in such this way for competitive pro play where, you know, there's imports and exports everywhere. So like you never know what could happen here. But for ISF, I think the main thing is being a part of this competition, getting your name, getting your country, like fighting for that pride for the country and out there. And then I think too, at the same time, if they can qualify, you already said this, like the stakes here are pretty high for this best of 5 in comparison to what we saw earlier today with the first 2 matches with Cambodia and Myanmar, and then Malaysia and Indonesia. Like they're in their group stage, like they're going through the round robin for this. Right. The deciding match. And then if they even get to whichever of these teams, whether it's Guam, whether it's New Zealand, if they get to the WEC, that is a whole nother experience for these players, because now you're in an offline event, which is probably some of their first time being in an offline MLBB event, you know, battling out with some of the best out there, of course. So that's something that they can look forward to, whichever team does win this. But I got to specifically say, the way that Guam played, there has to be some like major changes, I would say, with New Zealand, because there wasn't much showing from game 1. I feel like that's, and I'm almost just gonna say, you know, they're rather new, so like there wasn't enough data to collect off them. Like I don't want to count New Zealand out at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I'm just saying like game 1 was definitely rough for them, and Guam seemed like the team that knew what play style they wanted to approach with and then executed it very well. So, but if Guam does that in game 2, Arashi, I feel like it's almost safe to say like there is an experience difference here between the two. But I won't say it yet. I'm not going to say that yet, just yet. New Zealand, you have an opportunity. It is a best of 5. Get us to a 1-1, and then let's start breaking things down, you know, more technical here. Because lineup-wise, man, Arashi, it just wasn't like their lineup. Just if they took out the X-Borg, I feel like if they just took out the X-Borg, if it was banned out, then maybe they would have had a better chance in that game. But like you said, even in the highlights, X-Borg was a huge nuisance to New Zealand here. For sure.
So we have to wait and see, of course, what kind of style, right? Again, we talked about how they had tools, they weren't using it. I think we have to also highlight the fact that there are some moments there, like, I think one that really stuck out for me was where there was a fight on the bottom side and it kind of ended already, but then there was a shortcut placed down by Groovy Groove. In fact, Penguin came in like later to try and save it, you know? Moments like that are small, but they kind of build up, right? That kind of allows your opponent to snowball. So the communication, the shot calling from New Zealand can be kind of improved on as well. And you know, that's just the way it is, right? The fact that you're up against teams from so far away that's not in your local region, it's just like you said, Naisu, like the EXP boost. This is what it's allowing you to see, like, whoa, this is what teams are able to do, right? Why can't I do the exact same thing, improve even more to get that good? So I think for New Zealand, like you said, there'll be adjustments for sure, and there needs to be adjustments, but it's also a great chance for them to now recover a bit from this and then bring in something and show what New Zealand has got to offer, you know, because we've seen that they want to be aggressive, right? We saw the killing spree on the jungle. That's a bold move. We haven't seen junglers carry a killing spree in a long, long time. So I hope we see something cooler, something amazing coming in from New Zealand. But of course, it all begins in the drafting phase. And you have to wonder, again, what kind of adjustments, right? Because you said it's not just about the damage, it's not just about the utility, it's also the healing and stuff. It seems like Guam has, I guess, more experience because they've had more layers here that needs to be dealt with by New Zealand, and whereas New Zealand is a bit more straightforward. So I think right immediately there in the drafting phase for Game 2, we're gonna see something of that nature.
Number one, I just want to say a quick fact. It's done storming, so I think I've made it through the storm. Internet and electricity holding on together because I was so worried for you, Arashi, but I had to call Mirko back here. But I was also, while you were explaining that, and kind of what New Zealand needs to do to change things up. Part of that is me thinking, like, what did they play in their qualifiers during the OCC qualifiers to get them here? And so as I was looking at that, you had some changes. I mean, and probably some of this has to do with roles, it looks like, because me looking at this, I see, Groovy Groove playing a different role. He was playing some Mincetar, even in the XP lane, and then you had Fat Penguin playing the roam. So I'm just wondering if they're still trying to figure out what fits the best for their style, because even Fat Penguin through the qualifiers in one of their games, which I believe was a sweep, to get them here, he was playing like, Angela, there was a Kaja, there was a lot of these roam picks that are still actually pretty good picks and valuable, and they could use. I mean, even Noob Master was actually the jungle during the qualifiers. So that's why I had to go back and look, because, of course, we see this quite often where teams will change roles, or they'll even have some new members for IESF as they get ready for that and everything in comparison to what they compete with. But it looks like, now that I've looked this up a little bit closer, that even some of the roles were different here. So it makes me wonder, because we saw this in a couple different teams so far through the online games, where game 1 was a specific lineup or setting of roles and everything else, and then from game 2, like they switched it up. So that's something we might want to keep an eye on as we get to the draft here and for game 2 in just a second, are those the same players going to the same roles? Because maybe we just saw some different combination, of that. But obviously, they weren't running the lineup that got them qualified here to IESF. And by lineup, I mean roles. Like, the roles were different. They were switched up. So we'll see if that happens, because so far, again, when I'm looking at it, they had a very distinctive play style through their qualifiers. Here we are. We're jumping into the draft here for game number 2. You're going to have New Zealand on this blue side, and you're going to have Guam on the red. So right off the bat, Arashi, 100% agree with the first man. Get that export out of here, says New Zealand.
Yeah, they don't want the smoke, literally, right? The fire is just too much to deal with. But already changing the pick order as well here. Interesting move from New Zealand. We'll see if that pays off for sure once we've seen some of these picks and bans trickle through. But you also mentioned earlier, nicely, the Mincetar, right? That was something that New Zealand actually put to good use. Well, hey, Guam banned it away in game 1, and I was quite curious about that, right? Like, okay, is this something that's great in their region? But I guess they're having they did the research on their own here, showing again that they're taking this match very seriously. They've done their research. They have an idea, at least, of what to expect. And looking at the bans right here, Fredrin on top of the X-Borg, considering the amount of DPS slows coming in from the side of Guam, that Fredrin actually played a role as a bit of an engage tool, right? And part of why New Zealand can't really approach the neutral objective fights properly was also due to that quote unquote Fredrin advantage with the healing, with the damage. So not the pretty good ban for the side of New Zealand, but we'll have to see what exactly do they want to pick and what do they want to force onto the side of Guam.
Good observation, because I think part of this too, if you really want to deal with Guam, they could ban what they win against in the previous game, which it looks like they're going that route. I don't think they ban a Roger here. Roger wasn't, Faramis is going to be banned out. But like Roger, I'm just going to say, I hope it's not first pick priority for New Zealand. I think there's a lot more quality heroes that they could draft with the first pick. Guam, we're going to wait for the last ban. But this happened last time too. Like, I don't think this is a missed ban for our viewers out there. I think we're just waiting to see what that first ban was. It is the Valentina is all we see right now coming out from Guam, but so far it's New Zealand. I think it's more so of where are they going to go role-wise, and then what do they want to jungle with? Because I feel like that's part of the equation here. Solving the equation is having a good jungle rotation early on, because Guam started off strong and fast, man, and that's one thing that was apparent with their playstyle. So there's the Yuzhong banned out. Let's see what this first pick's going to be. Okay, it was they still went with the mid-star. Right. Okay, it is a mid-star. So that's actually a respect ban from Guam towards New Zealand. So like you said, obviously they know what they did their homework here. Mid-star is banned out, Yuzhong as well. So again, kind of really trying to decide what is that first pick going to be. I'd love to see a jungle picked up. Fredrin's banned out. Not sure exactly if they want to take the Lui Yi chip. I wouldn't take Harith, I guess. Harith? Do you feel good about this first pick for the Harith?
It was nerfed, and after the nerf, we saw that the win rate dropped from the 100% pick or ban rate, at least in our region in Indonesia. So I think it's still very good, though. There's still some options, especially with the changes to some of the items. I think there's potential for the Harith for sure. It's still one of the stronger gold laners, but you have to remember, it depends on how you play it, right? And if Guam can find ways to kind of make it an uneven fight through rotations, through ganks, and go and play that macro style. I mean, the Moskov is something that's still available, and we've seen a lot of teams when they see this Harith, they recognize like, okay, this is a very strong lane bully with sustain, with poke and burst damage. We can just avoid those fights and go for this global plays. But Guam going for the Ruby and then the Esmeralda. You know, we haven't seen a lot of Esmeralda since a couple of seasons back, but especially in this for these two teams, I guess, that Esmeralda, it seems to be something that they really enjoy. And I guess against the Harith, there is some value here to be found from that Esmeralda pick, but they've only shown one pick, you know? I feel that Esmeralda pick came out a bit too fast.
I think it was a good answer, I guess, for this. I mean, purely for the Harith. Like, that's all I'm thinking. Purely for the Harith. They lock it in. Florin, okay, so interesting that they will pick this up. New Zealand will pick this up, even with the Esmeralda coming up early on. Again, it was Esmeralda that was played by New Zealand previously in game 1, and it did not work out the way that they wanted to. So Guam obviously picked this up to deal with some of the Harith at least. And of course, now you have a Florin also picked up and locked in for New Zealand. So for Guam, it's really kind of dealing with that. And I would be surprised. I'm wondering if their jungler has a Baksha in his repertoire, because he could go ahead and pick up the Baksha. And we saw so far from Baksha's work with the, I mean, obviously he's got his passive to deal with, you know, some of that healing and the shielding and whatnot, but we saw a lot of Bakshas actually pick up Glowing Wand too. So we're going to have to wait to see what the jungler is going to be here. But carry this time around from, I don't know, man. It's almost like Guam is just saying like, hey, we'll take some of the heroes you guys had in game 2 or game 1 and we'll bring it to game 2. So, but this time around, I think a big part of this is the fact that they don't have to deal against playing into an export, because it was New Zealand that banned it out. The previous game, when it was New Zealand dealing with the export from Guam, that was a huge nuisance for them. So Guam is actually, I feel like, okay with this, with having the Esmeralda, having this carry, because yeah, they don't have to worry about that. And even then, Lui Yi is still slept on in the early phase. She gets banned out finally from Guam.
Well, we're talking again about the early game being so critical, so important. And it does seem like, you know, we saw earlier, Guam got that initial 2 kills, and then it just went, it's like a graph that just keeps going straight up from there. So maybe the early game snowball is just that much more important with their playstyle. So that being said, that makes the mid lane pick so much more dangerous. I mean, Lui Yi, so strong pre-level 4, even before the diversion. If they want to go for those fights again, then that's something that they have to try and keep in mind. But a Diggy ban for the side of New Zealand here, they are trying to make sure, I mean, that really hints at wanting to get more crowd control. Because if it's only a penalty zone, I don't think it really warrants a full-on Diggy ban. But I think that shows again that they want to get some more here seems like they're the ones expecting Guam to just do the same thing, right? Just keep going for fights, keep going forward aggressively. And for New Zealand, if they ban away the Diggy and they get the penalty zone and they get something with a bit more AoE crowd control, then like we were discussing earlier, Naisu, they can really go for a counter-engage playstyle. And considering that now Guam are the ones with a vulnerable short-range gold laner, that can very well pay off.
It could. I think it could be the right choice for them. Wow, Dairoth. Okay, Dairoth's going to be the last ban. I'm almost thinking, too, if they actually wanted to go to the Diggy, yeah, I don't think that's, like, warrants a ban, like you said, just with a penalty zone. So I'm trying to think what other CC they could actually bring to the table here with this lineup already. We got to wait for that last ban, though, coming out. But, you know, I don't know, man, because with New Zealand's lineup already, like Harith going in the gold lane, their mid lane options are, there's quite a bit still. They're going to be banning out the Matilda, by the way. So interesting that the Matilda's banned out, and that's probably more so for a safety too. I mean, they don't want to deal with utility. I'm also wondering why they decided, like, they banned out the Matilda, but the Ruby is there. We have seen Ruby go in the XP lane, but we've also more so seen her also in the roam. Oh, they go Tigreal. Okay, Guam goes Tigreal. This is great setup potential because a lot of this too is also just like, if a penalty zone happens or a Zaman force is dropped down by New Zealand, we'll find them in the implosion. Like, we'll fight them there. You can follow it up. Actually, there's a ton of setup potential just with the Ruby and the Tigreal alone. You utilize the Falling Star Moon, and then, you know, you kind of hope that you have enough damage by that point to deal with some of the healing coming out from the floor. And so this is difficult for New Zealand because, like I said, they need to know their mid laner. Looks like it's going to be Aurora that is locked in. But this already is very, I mean, they have good healing, but this is kind of squishy. Like, this lineup isn't very durable. You're more so relying on the healing throughput they're going to have. And then, of course, you have Terizla, who's somewhat tanky.
Oh,
wow,
what?
Okay.
What?
New Zealand's going to roll the dice and pick up a Ling, which is interesting because I was almost expecting, if this was their game plan, then maybe they should have gone the Angela Ling, that Ling combination that we see, but instead they go the floor Ling combination. I was like, the floor Ling.
You're saying the Ling won't be Finge poisoning because it's a floor Ling, just staying level to the ground? Man, we'll have to see. I mean, the Aurora, I guess, is one of those mid laners with a lot of crowd control potential. We did see that Malaysia used it to great use earlier, so not impossible. But Gusion, hang on a minute. Now you're getting a bit confused here. Is Gusion jungle, I guess?
Yeah.
It's burst going up against mobility. But again, if you're talking about a full-on collision, now Guam once more has a lot more tools, a lot more AoE crowd control tools to try and win this out. Even through the glacier and the penalty zone, there's still a chance that Guam can absolutely take this. Maybe the gold lane is where there's going to be a bit of a weakness, right? Especially in the early game. But once they get rolling, even the Terizla, right? I guess for the Terizla, that carry is going to be one of the counters, right? It can shred him down a lot better than all the other gold laners. So, man, I don't see them really winning out macro-wise, but I guess if they can use the Ling as a very effective split push tool, then they have the global pressure coming in from the pushes, but also the global healing. I feel like that's like the main weapon here for New Zealand that they can really use.
Well, we're going to find out here. Let's jump into the game. At game number 2 here in this best of 5, the deciding match between New Zealand and Guam, heading to the WEC in Riyadh later this year. And once again, pointing out the fact, I love this combination already from New Zealand, Arashi, and I talked about this yesterday when we first saw it, and that's a Warcry Ling, the new emblem, the Warcry, with the focusing mark emblem from, I believe it is the Florin here, that has that. So that's a good amount of extra damage. We're talking about 8% plus the 6% from the focusing mark once those are procced and if they're lined up correctly, right? So very interesting emblem. Still really seeing the kind of teams test out the Warcry emblem and even the Temporal Rain, the 2 new emblems with this. And I know you guys have probably watched a lot of, you know, clips and whatnot and streams of pro players playing the Gushin right now, especially with some of the changes. So this will be interesting to see how this plays out in this match.
Yeah, there are a lot more items available for the Gushin when it comes to like the build path. But look at this, the crafty Tigreal level 2 gank from the bush, something we haven't seen so far at least. But immediately floating Star Moon very early on. Wow, this game is off to a very intense pace. But yeah, I guess for New Zealand, they have a lot of damage addition here with the focusing mark and the war cry. But my concern for them is how are they gonna make sure that whoever they're jumping on actually sticks around? The only stun they have is on the Florin, so if that doesn't land, everyone from the side of Guam can very easily just move out. And look at the bottom side, the Harith, getting kind of low, but we have a pause.
Yeah, we're going to take a breather here, but it looks like you can see already the reason for that Esmeralda pick. You know, lock it in that Esmeralda gets that gets those shields that he wants to work against. But with this, no one going down just yet. It's mostly, you know, leading into that first turtle fight and everything else. And I think this is where we have to see. It's been a while since we've seen a Ling versus a Gushin in the jungle. The only thing I worry about having a Gushin though is, again, at least the Ling can kind of like hang around, you know, like hang around on the walls with a Finch Poise, like stay there, set up if they want to, and then you're always kind of relying on the fact that, okay, well, at least we have healing potential to help support that. Whereas the Gushin is more so like you have to be able to pull off like very finesse style things. Like that's, if I could think of one of the heroes that's very finesse like, it's Gushin. Because I mean, think about it. A lot of us, when we started playing MLBB, you probably saw some montage of like fast finger Gushin players. You know what I mean? Like that was the thing back then. And so this is still, I would say it's still great to see that it finally pops up in this competitive play, especially against a Ling. Good change of pace of things, because that's something that I've been saying about this new update, this new patch, was like, you know, this is refreshing. At least that's what I would say. I would say this is a very refreshing kind of meta that is forming. I don't think it's established yet, and a lot of these teams are still figuring out. I think even, you know, you guys' interview earlier on with Coach Arcadia, it would have been great to get a chance to ask him, like, as a coach, what do you think of the new patch and all these items and these changes happening? Like, where are things going from his perspective as a coach? Because I feel like still a lot of these teams are really kind of testing the boundaries or the limits of where some of these compositions and heroes can go.
I think I gotta agree with that, man. The meta is definitely still very, very new. The changes just happened. So I think for a lot of people, though, it's a very welcome shakeup, right? Because for the longest time, fighter in the jungle, play for neutral objective, that has been in play for so long. So I think the changes indirectly kind of brings more validation, more legitimacy to some of these assassins. Validity, whatever big word you want to use there. You want to. So it makes the assassin look more viable, but at the same time, with the changes to the Lord as well, you're seeing that, you know, it's a great effort here by Moonton to try and shake it up, make things exciting once more. Because, you know, the game is only as exciting as it is for a while. When everyone knows what to do, does the exact same thing, that's where it gets kind of boring, right? So I think it's a long-awaited shakeup. It's been a long time coming. And as far as I know, a lot of people I play with are all very happy with the changes, man. They think it's more fun.
They are.
It puts more heroes that haven't been really in the conversation at all back into the at least playable level. So I think it's great. But I do think that the fact that it happened so closely to several tournaments here, it definitely gives a big of a headache for a lot of the coaches, man. You're definitely just trying to squeeze everything out. Like, okay, what potential, what kind of creative essence can we bring out? But, slow peasy. Whoa.
Okay, we jump back in. That was a first blood grabbed by Kai. And then, meanwhile, it looks like also a kill. So it's a 1-for-1 trade. Looked like Groovy Groove got it that time. So, interesting. Jumping back in from that. But let's kind of break that down. For New Zealand, Groovy Groove gets the kill, at least in the XP lane. He's going to be okay with that. But they need to support Noob Master here. Noob Master is going to need some help. You can already see that, of course. Secret putting the pressure on this side of the map, trying to take that purple buff away. And at the same time, the Turtle's going to be started up from Guam, so they're doing a couple things at once, a multitasking, if you will. And now it looks like Groovy Groove wants to do something about it. Turtle already going to be secured, though, and now they're going to have to win the fight, but they just disengage and back out. Slop Ezzy able to secure that, again, on this jungle Esmeralda. I mean, we've... That's the thing, dude. Like, the fact that you have Esmeralda in the jungle, I know I was mentioning earlier, the Gushin versus Ling. I was just naturally in that mindset of Gushin in the jungle. But because it's in the mid from Secret, and that's the thing, is like, it's still impactful. It's a little bit different in terms of jungle or not, but it's something that we haven't seen. I only can think of one player that does pick Gushin in the mid lane, and that's over here in the Philippines, of course.
Oh, I mean, a while back, a long time ago, at least it felt like a long time ago, I think the team that is now Fnatic Onyx did go for like a Gushin flex kind of situation, because they have players that can play it both in the mid lane and the jungle. But Slopeasy on this Esmeralda, man, he is getting a lot of resources, going for a dive.
Gonna go dive under and looks to get the kill for Kai. Kai will be able to get it. Touch my bun will go down right under the turret, but they're going to trade across the map. All that extra gold going over to New Zealand. They're going to need it too. Secret now joining the fight, joining the fray. They go in the flicker. There's the incandescence as well. The Tempest of Blades comes down. They drop down the stuns as well, and they get dragged back in. Falling Star Moon from Slop Ezzy, now going to keep them at bay, but they'll fall under the turret again. It's a trade going back and forth, but Chulo will go down on the Aurora. So Guam bites back, fights back. And even in bottom, Touch My Bun has to stay and use that Zombied Force to stay alive against the 1v1. A whole lot just happened in the top lane.
And look at the proactiveness from Guam. Slopeasy immediately going for the buff. That will be one purple buff denied from Noobmaster. He was already having a tough time being denied by GS as well as Secret, but now with no buff as the next turtle spawns, Guam just doing a great job baiting New Zealand into these long drawn-out fights and picking the right moment, like earlier on the top side, to bait for a fight and then make sure that the fights happen as the cavalry, the rest of the team, comes in. And look at Noobmaster deleted.
Wow. Okay, I mean, that was literally a Shadow Blade slaughter. Like, that's what the second skill's called, and that was a slaughter. Noobmaster was just deleted. He was slaughtered there in his own jungle. So, yeah, as you were saying, Arashi.
Yeah, Guam is just starting to snowball once again. We thought that with this composition, maybe it's going to be a bit more difficult for Guam, but they're going at it. And with Slopeasy picking up the Starlium, that's a nice chunk of true damage. So the squishier members are going to be bursted down a lot faster. The tankier members are also going to start falling victim here if this Esmeralda just keeps dancing around the map out of control.
And we got a glimpse of it too. Secret, I believe his first item was the Sky Piercer. I think he did go that route. Now, top side, once again, Sukana Zen there with a Slop Ezzy. Down the fight still. Noobmaster. Look at the damage from Slop Ezzy. They have to use the heal, of course, to keep him alive. And now Slop Ezzy is just going to go ahead on this side of the jungle. And that purple buff is up, so this gets even tougher now for Noobmaster. Hopefully he's able to retribution this away, but Groovy Groove trying to hold it down, gives the information. Not able to get close enough. A little bit too late to the party and pops the Tempest Blades, but still the fight. There's the Frigid Glacier now actually pumping out quite a bit of damage, and there they go. Noobmaster will fall in the exchange. They'll fight, but they get frozen once again. The passive already going to be popped from Chule, and now they have to back off. Tigreal once again quite low. Groovy Groove wants the kill on JI, but won't be able to get it. Penalty zone gonna find multiple members and still alive. The body of Smith, but Secret comes in, and that's the Sky Piercer at work.
What a heartbreaking result for New Zealand there. Everyone so low. But in the end, it's Guam coming out on top, winning out in the purple buff contest, winning out in the fight. They forced New Zealand to just group together, and they're denying what is supposed to be their greatest weapon, that macro play. Noobmaster bullied, terrorized in his own jungle, not finding anywhere safe enough to really farm. And even in the gold lane, we talked about this Harith being such a value pick. He's 2 levels below of Kai on that late game carry. As Guam picks up this turtle, and they seek to go for more snowball potential, going straight for the gold lane.
Oh, look at the sword spike. Look at the slaughter again. The Sky Piercer. It is deadly on this mid Gushin pick from Secret. Oh, man. Arashi, I wouldn't be surprised if Secret gets another MVP, and now in the mid lane, working on it and gets the double. Finds Fat Penguin and Chole looking for another. Look at the procs come through. Penalty zone will not be enough as Secret picks up a triple. It is tough to see for New Zealand because right now Guam is on a line and they're following Secret's lead as he goes in with Incandescence. Won't be able to go in actually with a sword spike. Will get the kill, but even with the flicker will finally go down. It's a shutdown, but I think Secret is happy with that.
An instant one-shot Secret on the Gushin, man. We haven't seen this hero in so long, but this is what the new patch has brought, man. That's just so much more high-paced play, where these assassins have so much more to say. Already 8-1, how can they stop him? We talk about the lack of crowd control on the side of New Zealand. We're talking there about maybe the Esmeralda, but now, striking back.
New Master? New Master in trouble. The heal's not going to be enough either to keep him up as he falls. And now it's Kai's time to shine, forcing them back a little bit further. Zugeta Zen won't be able to catch them up with that Ruby. Even the I'm Offended already utilized. So Guam, 10,000 gold ahead. It took them a little bit longer in this game, number 2. But Rashi, I think you're starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together here. Guam is on a different level right now against New Zealand. 9 minutes in, we're 15 seconds away from the Lord, and I'm not sure if New Zealand really wants to even contest that or get even close to it, as New Master continuously gets shut down and his buff stolen from him.
And now he's not even going to go to his purple buff. He knows he was at least 3 levels below. He's going to try and push out the bottom side of the map, get a bit of farm safely without someone that can be penalized. They can be just caught out by Guam. But for now, look at the way Guam is playing, man. They just know what they want, what objective they're going to go for. And Slopeezy, once again, with the aggressive maneuvers.
Oh, okay, whoa, okay. I'm Offended, not going to be able to catch New Master, but I think Secret landed the sword spike. So we got New Master with the sword spike and the slaughter alone. Secret, once again, able to catch the Ling on this Gushin, and that'll be the Lord as well for Slopezi as he secures it for Guam. And this could be it as they push in 10 minutes in. It is only the first Lord, but I don't think New Zealand is farmed up enough to defend unless they throw everything on the defense here. And it looks like they might have to do just that as Lord makes its way in the bottom. So they bought themselves a little bit of time, but this defense has to be pulled off from New Zealand.
There's more AoE for them, but let's take a look at that replay, man. Slopeezy ushering him in. Zukato Zen tries to go for him, and we thought, oh, he's down. But Secret, man, immediately deletes him, gets out as well. Smooth operator as the waves come in, conceal from the side of Guam.
GI3S there on the Tigreal, using that conceal, finds himself beyond the turret. We'll go ahead and scoot on out of there. So they get the shields. That's about what their whole plan was there on the top side. Now that the Lord is making his way to the bottom. So once again, New Zealand on the defense. JS goes in with a huge implosion, but Secret will unleash. They get stuck with the frigid glacier, but still gonna find it out. The turret's down. JI3 finally goes down in the exchange, but Kai finds another kill. And once again, Secret waits on the whim. Might go in, but second guessing it. Takes too many shots as Chole keeps him at bay. So a good trade. New Zealand still in the game for now, but there's the falling star moon from Slopezi. Has the shields while Kai works on the base, and it's going to be too late as Guam will take game number 2.
Another great showing of aggression. Not breaking at all, going full speed straight towards the crystal. And that'll be New Zealand taking a defeat in game 2. They tried their best and it looked a lot more stable until it didn't. Man, that final fight, they just went in and took a full-on glacier, right? They got comboed by New Zealand, and it did not matter, man. They just brute forced it purely with the gold advantage. Guam, what a performance!
Yeah, you said it well, Arashi. I mean, it looked good until it didn't, and you know, even that even the Gushin pick, like originally when I thought that was going to go in the jungle there and it ended up going in the hands of Secret, he's got to be MVP of the game anyway. Like whether we see that or not, Secret had a hell of a game on this Gushin. We're going to take a look at the highlights here though in just a second and see, once again, a very dominant highlight reel here for Guam.
I mean, it looked painful, man. This was one of the moments where they went for the trades, right? We saw the adjustment. Oh, we can't go for fights. We go for a trade and gather on the other side. But then they overstayed here, trying to and set up a dive or a play. And as a result, they got flanked. They got caught out. And we saw what Guam can do once they started to get snowballing. And this game was no different. It started with Slow Peasy. And from there, that shut down Noob Master. Afterwards, it's Secret. And we talked again and again about the importance of the trio mid rotation. And for Guam, the two members that were doing so well there was the jungle and the mid lane. And even though, in theory, right, the snowballing members from Guam are magic damage dealers that can be itemized so easily against, there wasn't a mixed damage situation for the side of New Zealand. It doesn't matter. When you're that far behind, when you have so much... when there's no control for the map and you're losing out in levels as well, they just kept going for these fights. And for the most part, unless a catastrophic mistake is made by Guam, there's no way they come out on top. And the individual skills, the individual flex we saw mechanically by the players, man, that itself already shows next level stuff from Guam.
Yeah, like I said, Guam has a very distinctive play style, it seems, and they did this. They played this out so well. It looked like too for Chole there with the Aurora. Like there were some really good moments, where it looked like they'd be able to turn some of those fights around, even with the Frigid Glacier and the way that was all utilized. But I think if you really just break this down, Arashi, it's just they got outscaled again. I mean, anytime we're talking about a 10,000 gold difference at 10 minutes. That's quite the snowball, and it's quite a dominant lead to work around with. So, as you looked at that, it's tough to come back from that, even with a great setup potential with an Aurora. But there it is. Looks like our MVP for match number 2 is once again Secret here on that Gushin.
I mean, to no one's surprise, right? Let's be real. He was just going out of control there. He was winning in the laning phase. The roams were solid, and he was able to isolate the right targets, right? He kept going for the Ling and the Harith, and that's great. But even when his team wants to go for a bit of a combo, and he saw that big implosion play being made by GI3S on the bottom side, he was able to follow up on that as well, showing again the versatility of this Gushin and how it's been so underrated, because we haven't seen it in a long time. And I think it still provided really good value even before the Sky Piercer was even in the conversation. But the fact that he was already on the Holy Crystal, man, just shows again how much gold that he was just sitting on. Because the Sky Piercer, by all means, it doesn't really cost as much as some of these like really late game items like the Holy Crystal. But that Holy Crystal is like a good 3,000 gold, so he is definitely just rolling in it.
Yeah, it's and even when he picked up when Secret picked up the Sky Piercer, man, like he always had I feel like ideal moments on this Gushin to really utilize that and pop off with that, and it showed here. And I think a part of this too is just the fact that with the lineup that they had drafted around this, it worked out so well because the combination of having an implosion, which we saw work towards the end of the game there, and actually a couple different times throughout it, but the implosion, the falling star moon, and then having a pickoff where you can utilize the ruby to get the IMFendeds off is getting all of them clumped up together the best they can. Because remember, when that Terizla is locked in for the penalty zone, you know that they're going to want to fight there, because think about it. There's a penalty zone, there's a Tempest of Blades, there's a Zaman Force. So what that game plan says from New Zealand is, we want to fight right here. Right. Now, that's the perfect example from Guam, is to be like, well, all right, if you actually want to fight us, then that's okay, because we'll just implosion, falling star moon into all of that. And then, I mean, anytime you think about it with a Gushin, everybody clumped up, and the burst potential that we saw with the Sky Piercer especially, it gives them the favor of fighting around the lineup that we saw from New Zealand. And I'll say, like, I liked New Zealand's lineup here. It was just a little bit I only questioned it when we got through towards the end of that phase where they picked up the Florin, like, to round out the first phase. If I remember right, it was like the third pick. And I'm just not sure if they needed to pick up Florin right away for that. And then the Aurora, I feel like the Aurora was useful in this lineup, in this team fight they had. But again, anytime you pick up a Ling, Arashi, you know this very well in your region that loves to pick up Ling. Like, man, even with the changes, like, Ling still needs the support of the world to help you have a good game. Like, you need your buff, you need that purple buff, you need, even to an extent, the orange buff, and you need to be able to rotate around the map with, you know, a sense of security almost. And unfortunately, that didn't work for New Zealand. Like, that, they weren't able to do that.
I think I would agree with that, your suggestion, Nicey, to go for the Angela, right? Because then it also gives, aside from just the healing, of course, it also gives you a way to catch someone. I think our whole discussion earlier was about they have damage, but there's no way they're going to use a penalty zone on one guy to try and get the extra damage addition with the focusing mark and the war cry to on one person. So they didn't really have any tools to try and do so. And what makes it so layered from Guam, that's so devastating for New Zealand, is that if we saw the Ling, right, in the mid game when he was caught with that spectacular play by Secret, he was alone and he was able to avoid all those crowd control tools to try and get out. But then Secret got him, right? So the fact that there was an assassin in the game from Guam out of nowhere, right, in the mid lane, makes it so that everyone are now extra concerned. Okay, we have to stick together to avoid letting the Gushin just go for an easy kill. But then you get together, that's where the implosion happens. That's where this falling star moon happens as well. So they were planning on being the ones with the assassin, the ones that are threatening the members of Guam to stick together. But considering the fact that Guam was just doing so much better, the fact that they had Esmeralda that was just bullying the Ling so early on, it kind of turned the tides on them, right? They're the ones that have to stick together. Guam were the ones that can go all across the map whenever they want. And because they know that worst case scenario, they can buy enough time and the rest of the team can cut off the escape route for New Zealand. And we saw that happen again and again. So it's just like, you know, when you're playing rock, paper, scissors and you're trying to predict what your opponent's going to do, it just seems like Guam has predicted multiple times, whereas New Zealand, they're still on like only the first one or two times, which is why the adaptations, the adjustments and movements in the game, it just seems a lot more calculated for Guam. It's like they've done the calculations and they know exactly in what situation, where should they put their focus on. And that just leads to great performances like we saw earlier. Even when they were comboed, they didn't seem to fluster and immediately go on the run. They're like, okay, no, we've calculated this. We're 10K gold ahead. We'll take a glacier, right? We'll take something. Yeah. But, you know, in the end, we know that we have what it takes to win it out. And I like the fact that despite being a newer, younger region, they had the guts there to just go for the end, even though technically they gave up 2 shutdowns. It kind of got kind of close, but they still went for the end there, even though it looked kind of close. I like the fact that they dared to do so.
It's a good point because I don't know. So far from, I think I said this earlier, and now I feel like I could say this with confidence, Arashi, that Guam is playing on a different level from game 1 to game 2 here for New Zealand. And I gotta say, I'm happy that New Zealand is part of this, and they got to compete now in the OCC, which is their league over there, and that's how they qualified for this and everything. But I think for New Zealand especially, if you look at the way they played game 1 and game 2 was a little bit better, but it's almost like they just don't have what to allow Noob Master to pick an assassin so far from game 1 to game 2. It just hasn't worked out. So almost like I want to say, like, if they don't want this to be a sweep, because Guam is on that track right now. Like they're very dominant game 1s and game 2. So like, if I'm looking at New Zealand on what they could do to change things, I'm still going to go back to the fact of maybe they role swap and play what they played in the qualifiers. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe, but then again, who's to say that this is what they practice and this is what worked best for them? So if that's the case, then good. Do that. But I think part of this is don't, like, if Noob Master can play just a tankier jungler, where you don't have to rely so much on Noob Master to get these buffs and to have that certain play style, and let one of the other side lanes maybe even shine, or maybe that mid lane, then let that happen. Because right now I feel like the jungle is not even the biggest issue. It's containing Secret. Like Secret, like someone needs to match up against Secret, you know, and that has to happen here because, and I think that can, like, I think that definitely you can have a good matchup against Secret, and in that mid lane, it kind of locked that in. But again, Secret has had 2 back-to-back MVP performances now. And, you know, first the Lilia and then the Gushin pick. Like, what else does this guy have up his sleeve to be able to play? You know, with those, like, those are so... I mean, when someone pulls out a mid Gushin, like, you know, like, all right, this guy has mechanical skill. If he's going to play in the mid lane, the way that Secret played that mid lane Gushin, you know he's got that mechanical skill. So what more can he bring to the mid lane? So I feel like for New Zealand, as we jump into the draft here for game number 3, lock in that mid lane. And it doesn't mean you have to win the lane. Like for, I believe it was Chalui that played it the last 2 games, like mid lane. Just go toe-to-toe, like stay alive, rotate well for whatever jungle. And that's why I'm going back to the point of give Noob Master a jungle where he doesn't have to rely on all these buffs, so you can just focus on farming up objectives, and then you let your mid lane, Chaloi, go with you, rotate with you as a 3-man, and hopefully get a snowball on your side, because we have not seen that yet, Arashi. We have not seen New Zealand have an advantage early on, and that's what they need. So establishing that is going to be really from the early point of the game with that mid to even jungle combination, or whatever roam they decide to go with. So first ban's still going to be that Respect Minsator, by the way.
Yeah, it must be that good in the hands of New Zealand for Guam to respect it so much. New Zealand, though, will be banning away the Harith, but yeah, I'm expecting them to try, take your advice nicely, right? They want to go aggressive. Then even if they want to go for an assassin in the jungle, I like the boldness to bring it out, but you need to know what allows that pick to thrive, right? If you go for an assassin in the jungle, but then you don't really win out in the roamer mid lane duel in the mid lane to try and secure earlier rotations to help your jungle out, then things get difficult, right? So if they can't really have the kind of synergy, the kind of tried and true game plan, they don't like experience maybe to deal with multiple different kinds of approaches from Guam, then maybe they can also go with something with some picks that are a bit more independent, because we're seeing that when they are trying to set up for plays together as a team, as 5, they're kind of getting countered here. So if they can maybe set up for plays solo, right? Maybe getting really strong laners who can just try and go for duels 1v1, then maybe they can do a bit better. But at this point, we're just naming possibilities. But for New Zealand, though, I think they're really respecting this 5-man collision against Guam. So that's why the Faramis hasn't been let go at all this match.
Yeah, it hasn't. So, you know, Guam sticking with the bans that they have, I think is, even if they let some of these slip through, Arashi, I don't think, you know, I don't know, unless these are just pure power picks for New Zealand. But even when I look back at their games, like, they had quite a few unique heroes that they brought out during their qualifying matches. But so for this, they still go with these similar bans, and I think it's more so Guam just being very confident in whatever lineup that they actually pick up. And it's more so, like I said, New Zealand, you want to focus on what can they change going to this. And so even as they get through this last ban, I think it's Guam's going to take whatever they want for that first pick. Exborg was still a good choice because of what happened in the game 1. But for New Zealand, when they get those 2 picks, you know, Louis Yi is still open. I feel like that could, unless again, Louis Yi has changed a little bit because of the cooldown for diversion and everything. But, you know, for New Zealand, I'd love to see them hold it together versus in the mid lane against Secret here. So, but you do have also to take note, you have some substitutes going on here for both the teams.
Ooh.
So Secret and Zugato Zen have swapped with Giyu and Akuma. So this isn't going to be Secret in the mid lane. So I'm wondering, as they switch this, it's good to get those reps in for you know, the substitutes here as well. So I'm wondering if this is just going to be the same layout, if you will, for Guam, and same playstyle. That's
surprising, though, the fact that out of nowhere here they pulled out a swap Because Nicer, you were talking about New Zealand, like maybe swapping out the roster kind of when it comes to roles and all that. But Guam here with an absolute curveball. They secure the Fredrin, so
Yep.
clear speed, ganks in the early game, all still solid, still pretty flexible. I don't think we've seen it flex back, in EXP lane just yet. Now for New Zealand, very early Ling pick. They are set and they're set to try and make this work. And now with the Lo Yi, we talked about the mid prio being an issue. Maybe the Lo Yi can be a solution, but showing it so early here, I think it's very risky. Guam can maybe go for something of a counter already. They have a chance to maybe pick up the Angela to try and deny that away. We'll have to see, man. I think this is a very risky move from New Zealand.
I'm just wondering too, and this just popped in my head while we wait for these next picks. I wonder what server they're playing on. Like, I actually don't know anyone from New Zealand or Guam, or like have played with anyone from the Oceania region for MLBB. So I wonder where that server is located. But I'm just thinking about here as we wait for those next two picks. But yeah, I agree with you, Arashi. Ling picked up first phase like this is quite the statement from New Zealand, and for Guam, they're gonna lock in the Novaria plus the Ruby. So it's almost it's still a problem, I feel like, for New Zealand to deal with. Can you match up against a Fredrin? Like, you already locked in your Ling, so you already went that route. You already chose this. You already chose to wake up with some violence in your favor. Your match point. This match, by the way, is the deciding match to go to WEC. So if Guam plays like they've been playing with the substitutes that they even have here, and they cap this out in a sweep, they will move forward to the WEC. So for New Zealand, this is a confident statement. Like, this is saying, you know what, we know what we're facing, but we're still going to pick up the Ling. And I did say that if they wanted to pick up that Lui Yi, gives you good damage in the mid lane, and then with this is whoa, Leslie picked up. I don't know. How do you feel about the Leslie Arashi? Because even with some of the new items, right? I mean, some of the new items are great on the Leslie, I feel like. So what are you thinking about this? I'm already going to say it. This is a big damn first phase from New Zealand, man.
Can you imagine they've been hiding their true power for the first two games? They're just that confident. It would be cool. I'm just saying, it would make an amazing storyline. But the Leslie, wow. Against this composition, I don't see anyone that's kind of hard countered by the Leslie just yet. With the new items, and even before the new items, in some situations, you do feel like there's some potential for this Leslie. But right here, followed up with by the Lo Yi and Ling, I'm still struggling to try and see the vision, right? See how this is supposed to kind of like fit into each other when it comes to a full-blown composition. So we'll have to see. I think it's a bit too risky as well because they haven't seen the lane opponent coming in from Guam. If out of nowhere something aggressive comes up, something that's not a Claude, because usually Leslie counters Claude, then this Leslie might be in trouble, man.
I'm sorry, Rashi. This game, I'm gonna have to stand up for, so give me a second here. I'm gonna stand up because
oh boy,
we have this very interesting lineup, and I don't know. My desk is raising right now, dude. I mean, exactly. I'm living in the future, bro. I'm living in the future, right? So I gotta stand up for this one because this is Leslie and a Ling, and then a Lui Yi. And what else could they actually round this draft out with? I mean, they banned out the chip. Yuzhong looks like it's still open. I feel like if New Zealand grabs the Yuzhong... Oh, no, sorry. Yuzhong's banned out. Yuzhong Terizla's banned out. So XP lane... What is the XP lane for New Zealand? Like, what works for this lineup here that's so damage-centric? And, like, this looks like they want to end in 10 minutes, Arashi. But they haven't gone there yet. Like, they haven't been able to do that yet. So, like, this kind of lineup, like I said, you're throwing all your eggs in that basket of let's end the game early. But then I guess you could also say, like, hey, Leslie's locked in. We know she scales up pretty scary. Like, it's kind of scary the way she scales up later in the game. Not sure if her build has changed too much because of the way that her true damage and everything works. So let's see. Now that we're through that Minotaur is banned out. Good last ban from Guam though here.
So they're banning away. Guam is banning away just crowd control tools, possibly protection, right, for the backline, especially with the Lo Yi and Leslie. I guess there's some crowd control built in through the passive of the Loyi and the knockback from the Leslie, but overall, they're not very independent backliners. They can just survive a dive from a fighter or an assassin. So taking the Minotaur away is a great option. I wonder if New Zealand will default back to something like a Florin, right? Because with them being so squishy here, they can either go for a more sustain, which is a bit more risky, or they can get some more frontliners. And specifically, if they can get a frontliner with sustain like a Uranus, in a way, it kind of fits in and works with their composition. But they went for a Kaja here, so the idea is to grab someone, delete him, and this is the Logi Kaja combo. But especially in the early game, I am concerned about how well can New Zealand actually seal the deal, right? Usually Divine Judgment is paired with a carry or something. They need burst damage to ensure that whoever gets pulled with the Divine Judgment does get secured. But right now, they have scaling heroes and not a lot of burst. So I'm concerned if they can actually do so, especially if right now Guam picks up something beefy, something they can take a lot of damage. There's a chance that the whole game plan for New Zealand here can get thrown into disarray.
Oof. Good points here, and I like the fact that they have the Kaja, but okay. Clint locked in, and then the Matilda. So this is a whole lot more that they have to deal with. So New Zealand, like I said, this is an interesting lineup, what they decided to go with, but this is a very well thought and put together lineup from Guam, whereas again, your bases are covered from the beginning until the end. You have good physical damage, you have great magical damage that scales up in the Novaria later on. We haven't seen this just yet too much, but when Novaria does come through, we have to keep an eye on the items that are picked up, the build path, because we talked about this before. Wishing Lantern, one of the items here for the mages right now, is unreal on Novaria. Like it procs on 800% damage, I believe it is 800 damage, and then it's 10% current HP, something like that. And that's easy to do on a Novaria, and you're just doing it from the back. You know, you're just sieging on forward. And so that, and then coupled with the fact that you have quite a bit of burst damage potential with a Clint, especially if he snowballs, is scary here. So the last pick wasn't Arlott. Arlott is going to be the one that locks in. So Noob Master's still going to be on that Ling. And yeah, we have things falling in place, Rashi.
It's just aggression, man. More damage, more crowd control. I like the idea. We can't really stave off their aggression. The best defense is a good offense. It's something we've seen again and again. New Zealand are going to try and put that into practice at what is possibly match point for, what is possibly the final game here for this match. So it's a bold move. Like I said, I like the risk taking that we are seeing right here. But I must say, I'm quite concerned for their well-being, the Land of Dawn here. I think Guam's composition is a lot more well-rounded. And at least in the current meta, that has been the winning pattern. If New Zealand can pull it off, I'll be happily corrected by them.
Well, we're going to find out here as we jump into possibly the last game. It's match point for Guam, unless New Zealand can do something with this new iteration of this lineup, this new lineup composition that they have, especially in the damage department, to take us to another game in this best of 5. The team that wins this will move on to Riyadh later this year for the WEC, and it comes down to possibly this game, New Zealand. I will say too, I like the combination still that they went with here, Arashi. I'll paint this picture every single time I see it, and that's the War Cry with a focusing mark. That's a lot of extra damage they can play around with, but Noob Master, the biggest thing for him is to be able to secure these buffs, because you can already see JI3S, roaming around, trying to cause some havoc, and this will just get worse later on. So he's going to have to rely on Chalui to help him out for Noob Master this time around.
And Matilda is notorious for just being a lot more aggressive, a lot more troublesome in the early game. When it comes to the Litho, though, it does seem like Guam will have a bit of an advantage. And you have to keep in mind, this is a combination of factors here. New Zealand with their aggressive style, and also Guam with a substitution on 2 roles. 1 role is already quite concerning. 2 roles, we'll have to wait and see. But Slopeasy immediately going with that aggressive style yet again.
Ooh, again, Slampezi goes in with the Bracer's Wrath. That's going to be the kill already. First blood for JI3S. Guam very decisive on going forward for that first blood.
Man, Mathilda with the Quantum Charge, you have a bit more damage, your sustainability, and the movement speed that you require to get more wisps. Right there, New Zealand just felt that aggression. And again, without anyone that's beefy enough to really walk in the front, when it comes to information, they're going to be at the back foot. But look at Kai getting jumped on.
Oh, Tempest of Blade's going to be used. New Master, can he get the kill? He can, but he can't escape the turret. I don't think that's going to be worth it at all, because now also they trade the objective. New Master, very tough situation there on the bottom side. Okay, Slampezi will go ahead, and that's turtle secured now.
And look at the moves immediately towards Chloe. And they secure the kill as well. And immediately straight for the purple buff even. Guam, with changes, they seem to be just falling back into the same groove. New Master getting bullied once more.
Yeah, that was tough, you know, because it looked like that should have been an easy kill to grab, but unfortunately for New Zealand, it wasn't.
Ooh.
And already, it looks like Touch My Bun will go down on the bottom side. Look at that. Multiple members from Guam down there, utilizing again this Circling Eagle, I'm sure, from JI3S and the Guiding Wind, but now that comes up. Here's the replay, though. Is this, yeah, looks like we're going to see it here. Touch My Bun. 3 members down there come in and get the kill for Kai.
That looks painful, man. Touch My Bun definitely got his buns ruffled there. On the Leslie, though, this is what you have to expect. And there's no real outplay potential there, considering that for Guam, they have a good mix of mobility and sustainability. So even if they want to go aggressive and go for dives just like that, with the Mathilda in Tau, they can actually have a lot more success compared to Nuke Master, who's forced to trade 1-for-1. But look at Chloe going for a play.
Going for a play, gets the Divine Judgment. There's the Circling Eagle, but look at the damage already. Chloe goes down, and now New Master can't pick up the kill on Kai that he was looking for. Ultimate Strike going to be used, but now the return, and New Master will go down once again on top of Touch My Bun as he falls again. They can't pick up the kill. Fat Penguin, though, stuck under the turret, should be just fine, but man, Guam, the fighting potential this team has with this lineup is very apparent, and some of these early team fights already happening. And here we go, Arashi, just like before, Guam will continue to fight and take these resources away from Noob Master, and we know how much this affects these Lings when they don't have that purple buff.
Definitely a tough situation to be in. We'll have to see what's the idea, though, because we saw a bit of the vision, right? The Divine Judgment into the true damage of the Leslie. It was looking quite good, but there just isn't enough damage just yet. If this was like a late game situation, then maybe whoever was pulled can get taken out. But now, it's not about that. It's about whether or not they can survive long enough to even reach that point. With the goal difference extending to 4K, look at Guam already looking for the next target.
Oh, yeah, they're going to go bottom side once again. Kai joins the fight. Look at all the damage being pumped out here as it's a double for Kai. Every single time Guam just comes down to the bottom, Kai profits.
Kai and Akuma coming in right here, just wreaking havoc. You have to wonder what's the details behind the decision, but man, Guam just plays unfazed completely, going at it.
Yeah, so they're going to have to go ahead. A good start. Great start for Guam. This is a massive thing for the jump back and get healthy. But either thing is very risky. And when you're thinking about this lineup that New Zealand has, when they're playing against this lead that's set, it's a very expensive lineup for New Zealand. And you're already seeing what New Master has to deal with. So I think at this point, it's I don't know. I don't know how they're going to buy some time, because so far when you're seeing this, like this early on, they're not any crazy plays or anything like that. They're also just playing around the fact that Guam has a Matilda. Even with the subs that came in, they're still looking as dominant as ever.
That's the surprising part, because I thought we were going to see a bit more of a dip, an adjustment period maybe. That's usually what happens when two new players come into the roster mid-game, right? That you've played two games in the match with different people, and then you replace two of them. It usually doesn't really look that smooth, but that's just the way it is with Guam right now. And we talked about the individual laning, right? And for Guam, they're just winning out individually, right, in these small skirmishes that macro-wise, you're not even seeing New Zealand get a lot of opportunities to try and go for that big diversion play along with the Kaja. For the most part, Kaja is forced to show himself around the line of dawn just because the laners are just being pressured so much more than they were expecting.
Oh man, as we jump back in, you know, pressure or not, like look at this, right? 7,000 gold ahead nearly already for Guam at 7.5 minutes in. This is a tough area to be in if you're New Zealand or any team out there that is facing this kind of disparity in terms of gold this early on in the game. So, you know, with that, they also lost that third turtle. So what this means for New Zealand is once they even have that Lord come up, they're not going to be in a situation to really fight. This happened earlier. It looks like this was about the 6-minute mark. You can see them fighting even under the turret. And now once again, this is another fight that broke out earlier on in the mid lane, forcing them further back, and a shot from Giyu as some of the team fights that we missed when we had to cut to us and back to the game. And this was that third turtle that was secured there. So again, you see how Guam just asserts themselves on this part of the map from New Zealand.
And the fact that Guam has the Novaria, it also reveals the whole roster of New Zealand just so often. That's before talking about the poke damage. The fact that the Loyi kind of gets denied, always getting spotted by the Novaria, always getting shoved in by the Novaria, one of the faster clears in the game of all the heroes. So Guam just winning based on pressure, and even when it comes down to solo execution, they're just doing better. And GI3S with the genius one, what? Going for even more snowball, even more damage on this Mathilda. Technically, building magical damage increases the shielding as well, so it's not even that bad of an item.
Yep, it's it works, you know, in essence, especially when you have this kind of lead that you can work around with if you're Guam. A lot of this is going to work. And now once again in trouble, taken out in an instant. New master falls in the mid lane right before the Lord comes up, so that is going to be Guam just taking the Lord now. I feel like at this point New Zealand very demoralized in what's happening here throughout this game. I mean, throughout the series, it's been from game 1 to now game 3. Slopezi will go ahead and secure this Lord for Guam as they get ready to go ahead and assault the base already of New Zealand. We'll see if they can hold on, though, to kind of extend this game out.
You can see Guam, they're just playing so confidently. You saw Kai, 6-1 Clint. I know he's fed, but against a Lim, against a Kaja, against a Loyi Kaja in particular, that combo, he walked into the enemy jungle just to get a bit of extra farm. That's just how confident, how much more, you know, mentally advantageous Guam is right now. Looking at the items here, Giyu, with the enchanted talisman, is he going straight for a holy crystal? Looking at the components, that seems to be what it is. As Noob Master is trying to itemize for the Sky Piercer to try and finally secure some kills, but now Guam goes for the base.
Cool. You're gonna go right into the base. They go fighting it, circling the eagle, gonna find multiple members. Just blown up in an instant. Kai, though, again, will get the double, and Giyu as well. You saw the damage. Doesn't even have the holy crystal just yet, unless he just built it now. But man, New Zealand deleted in the team fight in the base, and now Lord just making his way there to the top side. This very well could be it as Guam gets ready. That's a flicker from Fat Penguin, and I don't think they're going to be able to do anything more. Clearing the waves out, working on the base here, and Guam will take a game 1, 2, and 3 in a decisive manner under the 11-minute mark as they will move on to the WEC in Riyadh later this year.
Two teams with big aspirations, but unfortunately, today there can only be one. And considering the performance, man, it just has to be Guam. Looking at the way they were able to outmatch when it comes to mechanics, when it comes to the macro game, it was a nice try from New Zealand, but unfortunately for them, they just have to catch up even more. It's back to the drawing board, back to the chase to be the best for the next opportunity.
Yeah, wow. They will. They'll have to, Arashi. I mean, I don't know. I'm watching the OCC Australia when New Zealand was going through that. I did not expect there to be that much of a difference, like this wide of a difference between them and Guam. But as we take a look at the highlights here for game number 3, it's every single game. Game of 1 to 3 was a highlight reel for Guam. For New Zealand, like they just made too many mistakes, and this was one of them. New Master going in for what should be a sure kill, not able to get it, and then dies to the turret there. That's just tough to start on the foot of a Ling.
And even looking at how they were positioning New Zealand, a bit too confident. I guess they were really banking on being the aggressors, but look at the rotations coming in from Guam, always there faster than their opposition. And occasionally you can see that members from New Zealand just get left behind. They get cut off from their safe zones again and again. And it's just a difficult situation to be in. It seems like even from the drafting phase, right? Like Guam just had a proper game plan all the way from the beginning to the mid game to the late game. And even when there are several setbacks for their team, they just had their focus still on the main objective, on the way they want to end that game. Whereas for New Zealand, you can see that especially towards that mid game where the snowballs have begun for the members of Guam, they were just in disarray. And this was a painful sight to see, man. Noob Master on a Ling that's not allowed to do anything at all. He just got locked down from full HP to no HP. And like we said, with the gold disparity so drastic, they just go at it purely with brute force and they still come out on top. And it's Guam, man.
Yep. Very impressive showing all throughout. Arashi here from Guam, and MVP for this game is going to be JL3S. Man, that's an L. I was thinking it was an I the whole time in game because I think it is just like the lowercase L.
Yeah.
But it's JL3S getting that MVP, and we saw just how good of a player, for sets. We saw the Tigre earlier, and we saw this, and it just really goes to show that every single one of their players for Guam, whether they're subs or not, also, as we saw some of the subs step in, Jiu and Akuma, they're dominant. Like their play style is still the same. The identity, the way that they played was just on point. And I want to see them move forward. Well, they are moving forward to the WC. I want to see them compete against these other countries now, because I just feel like they have a very good synergistic approach to the game and the compositions that they played here for this series.
We definitely want to see more from them, to see them go up against stronger teams, because that's when they can showcase even more of their skills, right? The stronger their opponents are, the more they're forced to dig in and show more of their cards. But yeah, JL3S. It's so funny. His name is like 3 L's, when it's 3 dubs for his team, especially for this match. But yeah, he went for the genius one, man. Usually you see the enchanted talisman for more shielding, more safety, but safety wasn't a concern. He just wants all that damage, and usually you want to do that with your main damage dealer being magical. But they had a Clint, they had the Fredrin, and even then he just went for the genius one just to show that dominations, man.
It's when you have that kind of lead, Arashi, you can kind of get away with stuff like that and go for more damage. Like you mentioned too, you saw Gio even going for the Holy Crystal. I think it was a second item that Gio was going for. Yes. And, at that point they already had a ton of damage. But again, Guam is your winner for the Oceania qualifier at this point. Congrats. In the Asian Championship. So congratulations to them. They will lock in their slot to the WEC, because like we mentioned to you guys viewing and watching right now, this was a best of 5 between these two teams, because there's only 2 teams for the Oceania portion of the Asia Championship, and the winner of this best of 5 moves on to the WEC later this year in Riyadh for the championships. And Guam did it in a very dominant fashion here from all games 1 to 3.
I think a lot of teams will definitely have Guam in the back of their minds, as a team that can pose a threat. By all means, some people can argue that they haven't really been proven yet. They haven't been put through the trial of going up against these stronger regions of Mobile Legends. But it's a great start. And I think they're showing again, of course, aside from the dominant performance that was secured by snowballing, you're seeing synergy. You're seeing vision when they're drafting, right? The way each hero kind of falls into place to try and shape up a proper game plan that can be executed. And you're seeing flexibility, considering the fact that they were able to just make substitutes happen and still have a stable performance. I think all those factors, even before we see them go up against some real powerhouses, it's still definitely something to be reckoned with.
I think when you look at their play style, it kind of fits in really well with what we're used to seeing, like at least in Asia. You know what I mean? Like Guam they're relatively new, I would say, like for a lot of people to see for the first time. And so far, it looks like that they can hang with some of the best teams out here in countries out here for Asia. So, you know, I think overall, I would love to hear how they prepared for this and maybe some of the experience that they had too, because I know we'll have an interview in just a little bit. It looks like it's going to be JL3S. So once they're ready, we're going to ask some questions here, because that's what I want to know. Like Guam, I don't even know that much about Guam. So, you know, to see them play like this is it's a very good thing, number one, to see exactly. And because I was watching their selection for this, and their casters literally said, we have a lot of good players. We had to decide who to, you know, to put together for these teams and everything. So it's apparent, Arashi, that they are all really good. Even the subs, like I said, that we got to see in Game 3. So I can't wait to have that interview with them and ask them kind of the preparation they've had for this and what they'll be doing even to prepare for the WEC eventually.
I mean, when you have an abundance of talent to choose from, that's where you can get really the best of the best, right? That definitely is a factor. So, like you said, Naisu, if there's just so many of them just competing for the 5 slots, well, I guess 7, you know, considering their subs, but considering all of them are just gunning for those spots, you can bet that the result is going to be a team that is passionate and a team that definitely has some skills to show off for it, to show that those decisions are not made randomly, right? There's definitely data to back it up. And I think I'm also curious to see if they actually kind of theory craft their own meta, their own style, or do they actually do take inspiration from some of the other regions, right? Because that's usually the generic approach we see from a lot of teams, especially the new regions. But maybe with Guam, it's just a whole different beast.
Yeah, and so, you know, while we wait for that interview, I'm looking at some of the placements now falling into place, because remember, we always have games going on simultaneously. That's something we want to make sure that the viewers understand, because some people I see in the chat ask this, like, where are certain games happening? Some of them are offline. Not all games are streamed because there's just so many games going on, guys. And so I was looking at the standings, and it looks like one of the next teams that did, looks like, I think they qualified for one of the spots here is Nepal, and they're sitting undefeated. So I'm looking at this real quick to see how else things are kind of falling into place here, because for Guam, that should be, you know, like I said, the team for Oceania, and then I think Nepal is one of the slots there. So, you know, as we get through this all happens like relatively quickly too. Like these group games and everything are happen very fast, and then we move on to playoffs, I think, starting tomorrow. So I think JL3S is ready. Arashi, let's go ahead and call him up here for the interview.
All right, JL3S. Hello.
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 Hi. Great to be here.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. All right, man.
Go ahead.
So first of all, how do you pronounce your name? That is something that I think we really want to find out.
So it's not JL3S, it is JBS. And since doesn't allow only characters, I had to split the B to something to fit it, you know?
Smart.
Got you. So it's JBS.
All right.
Yes.
Well, man, tell us a bit more about your region, because Naisu was saying that there's a ton of good players, and it was very difficult for them to really select the 5. Are you familiar with what happened there, like the competition you were up against?
First things first, before I say anything else, I'd like to say good game to the New Zealand team. We've been stressing for this tournament for so long. And you guys put up a really good fight. It was really fun. We were shaking before the first game. But thank you. Before everything else, really we had our own tournament here on Guam between our own personal teams. We're made up of kind of different teams, but we found who was available and who could play and make time for the tourney to represent Guam. Like, I have some of them right here behind me. Like, at the studio right now. Say what's up, guys.
Was that the qualifier, by the way, that was streamed? Is that what you're referencing? Was this the Guam qualifiers?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
got
it
you.
was the Guam
I
qualifier.
Yeah, I was watching that, and I heard the caster say, like, there's just so many good players out here in Guam, and they had to have that tournament to select on exactly who was going to play. And you guys are outstanding. Like, I mean, to see those 3 games and very dominant games for you guys, so you should be very proud of that, because it was, again, for a lot of viewers that would be tuning into this, it's their first time to see you guys play. So very interesting to see. And I have to ask as well, JBS, how do you guys prepare for the next part, right? Which is WEC later this year. You have plenty of time, until then to practice, but do you guys have, like, are there certain plans in place to prepare for the WEC?
Well, of course, we're going to do some scouting, watch all the other teams, see what type of play style they have. And then our coaches and analysts will try to help us formulate the right plan. Our team is pretty well versed in a lot of roles and different play styles, so I think we have a fighting chance.
All right.
Awesome.
I mean, that's what we were a bit curious about. In the middle of that match, you went for a substitution. So you want to share a bit of what was going on there? Or do you just want to give some experience and considering there's a room for experimentation? Was that the idea, or what was it?
Yeah. For the first 2 matches, we tried to do our best lineup, try to secure. And then for the third one, we wanted to see how well a different lineup with Giyu and Akuma would be like, since, yeah. But it was still, they knew what to do. We had a game plan. And yes, that's all I can really say.
Okay. Well, I mean, great talking to you, JBS. Unfortunately, I think we have to end the interview quite soon. But last statement from you here. What do you want to say to all your supporters from Guam? Because definitely there's a big, massive push behind you for your success. What do you want to say to them?
I'd like to thank all the people who helped scrim with us and made us be better. Our commissioner, our coaches, the players, the parents who drove the people to the practices, and all of our sponsors. Thank you very much. A massive weight has been lifted now that we qualified, and we're excited to move on to the next step.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, JBS. I think we have to end the interview right there.
Can I add on? The enchanted talisman. I swapped it because I went for mana boots instead.
I see. All right. Well, definitely taking notes from you right there, bro. But yes, thank you very much for your time, man. Best of luck. Congratulations on the victory. Looking forward to see more of Guam in Mobile Legends.
There we go.
All right. It
Great
seems like
man.
Yeah, it seems pretty fun. The whole atmosphere over there seems kind of brotherhood focused. It's like what the Indonesians would say.
Yeah, it's I would say that just here, I wanted to ask more questions. I know we have to, some of the interviews we don't have as much time because we have more games to go through today, but hopefully, when we get to see them out there in the WEC, forever who's all going out there to cast and everything, can get to know some more about these players, because I feel like there's always a ton of story to a lot of these players in these countries, these teams that a lot of people don't know so much about. I mean, are they students? Are they working? How do they balance their schedules between playing and everything? Because that was something that we always like to ask, even when we were doing the African qualifiers, was, how do these countries and these teams prepare for this? Because a lot of them are not as lucky as other parts of the world, like Philippines, Indonesia, maybe Malaysia, where, they get to just dedicate their entire day and week to MLBB practice, you know? So these guys are also balancing life and everything else that they have to deal with throughout their preparations. So that's why the next thing is like, you know, what is it? They have some months time to basically get to the WEC, but it's great to see them. And I can't wait to see Guam perform there on the world stage.
I mean, even earlier, he was thanking the parents for just driving out their children to go to the practice areas. So there's definitely more effort required for them to even get what we kind of take for granted here in the bigger regions for sure. So I do agree, Naisu. A lot of stories to be uncovered for sure. But I think, unfortunately, that'll be it for this match. We're going to have to go straight to a break because, like you mentioned, Naisu, there's still more matches to come. And so we're not even through half of it just yet. I think we're just about passing that halfway mark. So don't go anywhere, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, back at home. We'll be right back after this break for the next big match.